Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. This is 7 Branch Candlesticks. My name is Lee. This video is made for the critics in the Seventh-day Adventist Bible discussion group. It seems that they have a misunderstanding of the seventh-day Sabbath. Do we then make void the law through faith? Certainly not. On the contrary, we establish the law. Romans chapter 3 and verse 31. So let's apply your understanding to that verse. Do we then make void the old covenant through faith? Certainly not. We establish the old covenant. Would Paul say this? No, he wouldn't, because the old covenant is void. The law written in stone is not the old covenant. The law written in Moses' book of law containing ordinances is the law that was abolished, and I'm going to prove this. Having abolished in his flesh the enmity, that is the law of commandments contained in ordinances, so as to create in himself one new man from the two, thus making peace. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 15. These were not the 10 commandments. The 10 commandments were not ordinances. What law was given to the Israelites to reveal sin? The 10 commandments, not the ordinances that Moses wrote down, which God gave him. And I'm going to prove to you that these were ordinances. The seventh-day Sabbath was to be kept every week, not for the purpose of feasts, but because it's the Sabbath of the Lord. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. Leviticus chapter 23 and verse 3. Now, the very next verse starts the feast day Sabbaths. These are the feasts of the Lord, holy convocations which you shall proclaim at their appointed times. Leviticus chapter 23 and verse 4. The feast day Sabbaths are the first Sabbath, which is the Passover, is on the 14th day of the first month. Number 1, the Passover. Leviticus chapter 23, verses 4 and 5. And they're the shadow of the sacrifice of Christ. Number 2 is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And the Feast of Unleavened Bread is the 15th day of the same month. Number 3 is the Feast of First Fruits. Leviticus chapter 23, verses 9 to 14. That's the shadow of the resurrection of Christ. Number 4 is the Feast of Weeks. That's Leviticus chapter 23, verses 15 to 22, and that's the shadow of the birth of the church. Number 5 is the Feast of Trumpets. Leviticus chapter 23, verses 23 to 25. That's the shadow of the loud cry, or the second Advent movement. Number 6 is the Day of Atonement. Leviticus chapter 23, verses 26 to 32. That's the shadow of the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary for the judgment. Number 7 is the Feast of Tabernacles, which is Leviticus chapter 23, verses 33 to 44, and that's the shadow of the second coming and millennial reign with Christ. These feast day Sabbaths were all foreshadowing the ministry of Christ. These feasts were also mentioned in Exodus chapter 12, verses 5 to 10, and God tells them it's the Lord's Passover in verse 11 and calls them ordinances in verse 14. So this day shall be to you a memorial, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it as a feast by an everlasting ordinance. Exodus chapter 12 and verse 14. Where in the Bible does God ever call the 10 commandments ordinances? So many people miss this. The ordinances that were abolished were those commandments contained in ordinances that pointed to the sacrifice of Christ. The seventh-day Sabbath was not a shadow of Christ because it was instituted at creation. There was no need for Christ to come and die on the cross at that point. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. Who's the stranger within your gates that God is speaking of? We're going to get right back to that. Why? For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and earth, the sea and all that's in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. This is Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 to 11. When did God bless the seventh day? Read it again. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day. God called the seventh day the Sabbath that was made during creation week. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he'd rested from all his work which God had created and made. So Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 to 11 tells you that the Sabbath day is the seventh day because at creation, he blessed the Sabbath day. Genesis chapter 2, verses 2 and 3 tell you the same thing. How much more clear do you need this? Now, were the Israelites supposed to keep the Sabbath to themselves? Absolutely not. They were supposed to be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, and share God and his word with others, including the Sabbath. The Sabbath was given to Israel to proclaim to all, as well as all of God's commandments, including the sacrifices. Also, the son of the foreigner who joined themselves to the Lord to serve him and to love the name of the Lord to be his servants. It's talking about Gentiles, the sons of the foreigner, who joined themselves to the Lord to serve him and to love the name of the Lord, to be his servants. Everyone who keeps from defiling the Sabbath and holds fast my covenant, even them will I bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. And what does he say about the foreigners' burnt offerings? Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. That's Isaiah chapter 56, verses 6 and 7. He says, even them I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. The sons of the foreigner are Gentiles. The Sabbath was also given to them. The Israelites were supposed to share this with Gentiles. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. You've been told, you've been made aware, you're to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Thanks for watching.